I was closing up alone the night it showed up. The extra aisle. It was a slow Tuesday. I had music playing low in my earbuds, working my way through inventory using the zebra scanner we all carried. I scanned shelf labels, logged stock, moved to the next. Everything matched. Until I got between aisles 17 and 18. My name's Leah. I work night shifts at a big box home improvement store just off the highway. The kind with 20 aisles of shelving, concrete floors, and humming fluorescents. We're supposed to follow the store layout exactly during inventory, making sure the handheld scanner reflects what's actually there. If anything's missing, we log it. If anything's extra, well, that doesn't happen. Not unless someone's messing with the system. This wasn't my first solo close. I knew the layout by heart, and the scanner interface too. It pings when you're too far from a tagged shelf, vibrates when an item doesn't match, and flashes green when you're good. But that night, right after aisle 17, it buzzed like I'd skipped a section. The screen flashed, aisle 17.5, unscanned. There was no aisle 17.5. I even walked back to check. It was just the usual wide gap between aisles, big enough for pallets or carts, and nothing in the middle, just bare floor and the backs of shelves. But the scanner had it listed like a real aisle. UPCs, item numbers, even bin labels, all assigned to this non-existent spot. I tried to skip it and move to aisle 18, but the scanner wouldn't let me. It kept forcing me to walk the length of that gap like it was real. And when I passed through it again, the device vibrated, then beeped once. A product flashed on the screen. SQ 388201-3 in, lag bolt, bin A. I turned slowly. There was no bin A, just air. I called over the radio to see if anyone had modified the store layout, but no one answered. Then I remembered. I was the last person in the building. The other closers had clocked out an hour ago. I was just supposed to finish a small section and kill the lights. Curious, I scanned the invisible bin. It pinged green. A few feet ahead, it buzzed again. Shelf C. I held the scanner up like a flashlight, walking through a ghost aisle, scanning empty air and getting valid hits. At some point, I looked up and realized I was no longer between shelves. There were now racks on either side of me. Not physically, but showing up clearly on the scanner screen. I backed out of the area fast. Once I stepped back into the real aisle 18, the scanner interface blinked, then reset. The phantom aisle vanished from the scanner display. Everything looked normal again. I stood there for a minute, trying to slow my breathing, telling myself it was just a glitch or some mislabeled tags. To prove it to myself, I went into the break room and logged into the inventory terminal. I searched for aisle 17.5. Nothing. No SKU 388201 either. When I cross-checked the handheld's history, those scans were still there, but with no corresponding item records. Just a long list of empty entries, time-stamped and GPS-stamped, right between aisles 17 and 18. I decided I was done for the night. But as I started walking the floor to lock up, I noticed something else. A pallet jack had been moved. It was sticking out into the main aisle, halfway turned, like someone had just rolled it out. I hadn't touched it, and no one else had been here. That's when I heard it, the soft chirp of another scanner, not mine. It came from somewhere near the back corner, close to where aisle 17 ends. Then another beep, like someone was walking that ghost aisle, scanning bins that weren't there. I turned off my scanner and set it on the counter, like maybe if I stopped interacting with the system, it would all go away. Then I walked toward aisle 17, slow and careful. No one should have been back there, and no one was. The overheads buzzed softly, flickering slightly like they always did near the electrical junction. But as I passed the midpoint, I saw it. Just for a second. A figure about my height, standing still where the fake aisle had been, wearing the same black vest I was, holding up a scanner. Her head tilted at the same angle I'd used earlier, like she was logging an empty shelf. I froze. The second I blinked, she was gone. I had the scanner in my hand. I picked it up again without remembering. It went dark. Full shutdown. Dead screen. A second later, the store lights clicked off in a wave, motion sensors timing out row by row. I backed away slowly. When I turned to leave, I heard one last faint beep behind me, like the scanner had come back to life in someone else's hand. I reported it the next morning. Nobody believed me. The inventory lead chalked it up to fatigue or user error. They even joked about it, called it the ghost aisle, and left a sticky note on my locker that said Bin A, paranormal screws. But I keep thinking about that layout. It wasn't random. The scanner mapped it like it knew what it was looking for, as if that aisle was real once, or still is, to someone. Maybe I didn't find something that glitched in. Maybe I walked into something that never left. I didn't say anything to the new guy when he came up to me, just nodded and walked away. But later that night I went back and pulled the logs again. There it was, SQ388201, active again. Same phantom entry, same timestamp pattern. Only this time, the scans kept going, past the original endpoint, down what would have been the far back wall, like someone had kept walking, deeper into an aisle that still doesn't exist. We didn't hire him. That's what made it so weird. He wore the right vest, moved like he knew the job, even used the pallet jack like he'd been doing it for years. But every time I asked who the tall guy in back was, I got the same answer. Who? My name's Isaiah. I've been working night shifts at this store for over a year. Stocking, returns, a little of everything. After 10 p.m., it's just 6 of us and a manager. No floaters. No one unaccounted for. That's why the guy in the vest stood out. Tall. Moved quiet. I only ever saw him from a distance, wheeling pallets out of receiving or slipping around the far end near seasonal. I figured he was a new hire. But when I asked the lead who he was, she frowned and said, "We didn't bring anyone new on this week." Then I started noticing things. Pallets repositioned. A lift plugged in that nobody remembered using. A wrapped stack of soil labeled and staged, even though none of us had touched it. We joked that the guy was some kind of ghost employee, invisible labor. One night I saw him full on, through the break room window. He was pushing an empty cart past the compactor, never looked up. Just walked with this slow, mechanical rhythm. I knocked on the glass and asked what area he was working. He didn't stop, just rounded the corner behind seasonal and disappeared. That area's always been weird, dim, quiet, dusty. It's where we store broken fixtures and out-of-season shelves. No mirrors, no cameras. When I walked back there, I found fresh boot prints. I followed a few of the steps, and that's when I found the first walkie, lying in the middle of the floor. Screen cracked, battery completely dead. I'd just passed through there earlier. It wasn't there before. I tried to brush it off, figured maybe someone from another shift was cleaning up and forgot to log it. But I kept seeing the guy, always just out of reach. Always moving like he belonged. One night, I stayed late on purpose, just in case. Around 4 a.m., I caught a flicker of orange vest in the corner mirror near receiving. I stepped out. Nothing. But I heard the faint backup beep of a lift reversing, even though everything was powered down. I finally told the manager. Not just about the guy, the walkies, the movement, the pallets that kept shifting when no one was around. She didn't laugh. She asked me to walk her through the route. Then we checked the cameras. Receiving, compactor, seasonal corner. We pulled the timestamp. I watched the exact hallway I'd seen him in. Same night, same time. There was nothing. No glitch, no movement, just a dead feed of empty space. After that, I started staying later more often. Sometimes I'd see him. Sometimes I wouldn't. But one night, I followed him. He turned down the hallway behind seasonal. Slow, steady. I waited a few seconds, then went after him. I didn't find him, but I found 6 walkies scattered down the aisle, some crushed, some showing static before dying. That stretch of the store has no signal, just dead air and old shelves. I could feel how quiet it was, like the lights had pulled back, like the space had gotten thinner. The next night I passed the surveillance room. The door was cracked open. One of the feeds was paused. I leaned in. It was the hallway behind seasonal, frozen on a still frame. A man in a reflective vest, back to the camera, watching the monitors. Then the feed cut out. I asked the manager who paused it. She looked confused, said no one had used the room that night. I didn't argue, but I kept checking mirrors after that, just to be sure. One of the lift guys quit last week, said someone was following him through the back lanes. He just left the vest on a cart and never came back. They've closed off that whole hallway now. Manager says it's for safety. Moved seasonal to the front of the store. Surveillance room stays locked. I don't stay late anymore. But sometimes, when I pass the old compactor lane, I see fresh boot prints in the dust. Long, even strides, never leading out. Last night I found a walkie again. Still had battery. I picked it up. It chirped once. Then static. Then my name. Spoken low, almost like a whisper. Then it said it again, a little closer. And a third time, right in my ear. I dropped it. Turned around. No one there. Just the mirror at the end of the aisle, my vest, my reflection, and something I haven't told anyone. In the reflection, I wasn't alone. There was someone standing just behind me, wearing the same vest. I don't remember taking that picture. That's what messed with me. I was standing on the far right of the group. Same uniform, same lanyard, same name tag. But I have zero memory of being there. And the guy next to me? The tall one, with the weird half smile? I've never seen him in my life. My name's Renee. I work closing shifts at a big box store, mostly restocking and cleaning up after customers. There's an Employee of the Month wall in the break room that's been there for as long as anyone can remember. A photo every month, framed and pinned, all the way back to the store opening. Half the people in them don't work here anymore. Some of them I've never even heard of. We were eating lunch when I noticed the photo. It was from last month, a group shot for the seasonal reset crew. I didn't work that reset. I was off that week, visiting family. But there I was in the picture. And standing right next to me was a tall guy in an older-style store vest. No one at the table recognized him. I asked around, showed the picture to a few other night shift people. Most of them laughed it off, said maybe I'd forgotten, or it was Photoshop, or just someone who looked like me. But the tall guy, No one knew him. Not a single person could give me a name. That night, I went back to the break room after close and checked the other frames. He was in more of them, older ones, going back years. Always in the back or off to the side, never smiling fully, always wearing that same outdated vest. I pulled down one of the oldest photos to check the date, 2009. The guy looked exactly the same. Same height, same expression, same vest. I showed it to a manager. She said he must have been a long-time employee who transferred years ago, but when I asked if we could look up his name, she got quiet and said she didn't have time for that right now. Later that night, I noticed something else. The newer the photo, the closer he was to the center of the frame. In the oldest shots, he's barely visible. Now he's standing right next to people in the front row. I tried to forget about it. Told myself it was just a weird coincidence, maybe a different guy each time who looked similar. I stopped checking the wall when I went in for break. But one night, I overheard 2 day shift employees talking about the extra person in one of the photos. When they noticed me listening, they changed the subject. I figured I'd let it go. Until the next week, when I saw the newest employee of the month photo being put up. I was in it again, smiling, wearing my current uniform, but I don't remember being there. And the tall guy? He was standing right behind me this time. That was the moment I decided to figure it out. After close, I went to the break room alone, took the most recent photo off the wall. On the back, someone had written the date, 2 weeks ago. I checked my schedule. I wasn't even working that day. I started digging through the cabinet where old office supplies are kept. Found a folder with extra prints of group photos from over the years. He was in every single one, always in the same vest. And every so often, there was a photo with someone I knew personally who swore they hadn't been there either. I decided to check the security footage. If I could see who took the photo, maybe I'd get answers. I waited until the floor manager went outside for a smoke, then used the spare key to the surveillance room. I found the file from the date on the back of the newest picture. Skipped ahead on the surveillance to that date and time when the group would have taken the picture. Everyone was laughing and talking. Then suddenly, the group stopped. They just all froze for a moment, perfectly still, like someone had pressed pause. Then, just as suddenly, they went back to talking like nothing had happened. I leaned closer to the monitor. The tall guy was there in the frame, standing behind me, wearing the same vest from every photo. But his head wasn't turned toward the group. It was angled upward, directly toward the security camera. As I kept watching, I realized his eyes were moving. They weren't watching the room. They were tracking me, following me in real time as I sat there, staring at the footage. I backed away from the console, rewound the footage. Same thing every time. He never moved except for that moment his eyes locked on the camera. I tried checking earlier in the day to see when he came in. He wasn't there. I checked after the photo. He wasn't there either. It was like he only existed in the moment the picture was taken. I put the photo back and locked the surveillance room. For the rest of the shift, I kept catching myself glancing toward the break room door, half expecting him to walk out. The other employees didn't notice anything. They just kept working, laughing, talking. But the next day, when I went to get coffee before my shift, I passed the employee of the month wall again. The newest photo, the one with me in it, had been replaced with a slightly different one. Same group, same positions. But this time, the tall guy was a little closer, his shoulder almost touching mine. I thought about telling the manager, but what would I even say? That a man no one remembers is photobombing a decade of Employee of the Month pictures? and somehow he's getting closer every time. Instead, I started taking my breaks in my car. I stopped going near the Employee of the Month wall completely. But every now and then, I'd catch other employees staring at the same wall of pictures with the same frown I must have had the first time I noticed. A week later, one of the overnight crew asked me if I'd gotten my picture taken for the upcoming holiday display. I told him no. He looked confused and said he'd seen me in the break room that morning, standing with a group while someone took pictures. I wasn't even in the building that morning. I checked the folder of extra prints again. There was a new stack on top. This month's. In every one, the tall guy was standing right next to me. In some, his arm was just slightly behind my back, like it might have been resting there. I shoved the photos back into the folder, locked the cabinet, and left early. I couldn't stand being in that building another second. On my way out, I glanced toward the wall one last time. There was a new photo pinned to the corner, not in a frame yet, just a printout. It was me, alone, standing in the break room, smiling, and the tall guy was right behind me, his hand on my shoulder. I didn't stop to take it down. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. But that night, when I got home, I saw a piece of paper sticking out from under my apartment door. It was the same photo from the break room wall. Only now, the change wasn't his position. It was mine. In this copy, my head was turned slightly, and I was looking directly at him.